You're listening to Good Company. I'm Hollie Taylor, and I have the wonderful privilege of sitting right across a picnic table with a beautiful fountain in the background with the one, the only, Ann Wilson.
Aww.
Ann, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It's so wonderful to be hanging out with you in the heat.
I know.
How do you keep your curls looking so nice?
Oh, it's a lot of hairspray and products.
What did we do before these kinds of things?
I know. It's crazy.
My goodness. Well, we didn't hear much of this Ann Wilson, and then all of a sudden, My Jesus was huge on the charts, and it was really sudden. And it was such an incredible start for you, but it was birthed out of pain. And I'm just going to jump right into things, because often God brings us, or we just end up in a place of pain, but then we find purpose out of that.
Absolutely.
How did you navigate from pain to purpose?
I think for me, when my brother passed away and I lost Jacob, I lost my brother in 2017. He died in a car accident. And when I did, I felt like my world was just, was turned upside down. It was very devastating. A lot of grief, a lot of hardships. But in those moments, I just felt the Lord really showing me that he was going to use the tragedy for good. And at the time, I didn't know what that looked like, but I was just trusting that that he was going to do what he said he does in his word. And so that kind of led into the Lord calling me to music. And I remember being at my brother's funeral, and that's the first time I ever sang in front of anyone, was at the funeral. And when I got up on that stage, I just felt this sense of hope and peace that I had to keep going. I couldn't give up, because God was going to use my story for good one day. And so seeing how he has done that now, 6 years later, is far greater than I could have ever dreamed. And so I think for me, what brings hope is obviously knowing that my brother's in heaven and knowing that I'll get to spend eternity with him. But also when I meet people and I hear stories of how My Jesus or any of my other songs have impacted people, that's when it really, for me, is a full circle of God is using my music, and hearing other people's stories gives me hope, because it's oh, this loss wasn't in vain. I didn't just lose my brother and nothing good came out of it, but so many thousands of people have literally given their lives to Jesus because they heard My Jesus. So that's just really, to me, that gives me a lot of hope throughout the days and keeps me going on this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So with regards to My Jesus, that was kind of a surprise hit. What are some of the other surprises that God has put in your way?
So My Jesus was actually my first single ever. I had no music out before then. And so people are always what were you doing all those years? Where were you? And I was just developing as an artist and writing songs and all of that. But the Lord has really been opening some doors recently for me in country music, which has been really interesting. I grew up, listening to country and Christian, and obviously have been in Christian music, and that's my heart, is sharing the gospel. But the Lord has really called me to be bold and be courageous and step out and go take the gospel into places that it's not welcomed and not invited. And so that's been a surprise, but also a challenging time recently of the Lord opening these doors. And most artists would be oh, I get to go in country music, and I am that way. But at the same time, that's not my joy. That's not my love. My love is Jesus and sharing the gospel with people. And so I've kind of been in this season of the Lord has just been surprising me left and right and opening up all these doors, but it's definitely been something that I've had to pray about and make sure God wants me on this path, which I feel that he does. So it's really exciting.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And now you, of course, have the book that shares your story. Can you please explain to me why it was so important for you to write your story down?
Yeah, I think when I wrote the song and I released it, and I think in 24 hours it had 9 million views on Facebook. And that's when I knew oh, this is insane. God is doing something. I knew that it was almost like a prompting from God of you have to document the miracles I performed in your life to inspire other people. Because I think when you lose someone you love, your head's kind of down and you're in the grief and the pain. And sometimes it's hard to look around you and see what God's doing and what good he's bringing out of it. And so this book really talks about, it goes from my childhood all the way up until last year, and it documents every single miracle that God did, every single open door, every single surprise along the way, and brings it back to full circle of what it means when God says in the Bible that he will use everything for your good, for those who are called according to his purpose. And so that's really the hope of it all. It's called From Heartache to Hope, and it really showcases deep grief and then to the most beautiful hope that you could ever find. So
what is one single thing that has helped you navigate grief?
Oh,
I'm sure it's a multiple, but if
yeah.
you pick like one of the main
I would say
things.
counseling.
Okay.
I had grown up, I'd never gone to a counselor. I grew up in an incredible home. I didn't really have a reason to go, thankfully. I know a lot of people do, and so I'm grateful that I had never really had a necessarily reason. And I remember asking my mom and dad, I was like, I think I need to go talk to somebody outside of the family. And when I did, I talked to a sweet lady, and she just completely and totally changed my perspective on like, it's okay to grieve. And Jesus weeps with us during our grief. And so there's nothing wrong with being upset, angry, confused, waking up one day and being super frustrated with it. Like there's all the emotions that you're going to feel are okay. And I think when I talked with a counselor, it really helped me overcome the grief.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about the hills and valleys of life and why me moments.
Yeah.
Can you think of a why me moment that was a big one for your life, and how did you get out of it?
Yeah, honestly, when Jacob died, I remember falling to my knees one day in my bedroom. We had been sleeping in my parents' bedroom with my parents after Jacob died because me and my sister wanted to be close together with our family. And I remember my mattress was out of my bed, and I was sitting on like the wood frame of my bed, and I remember falling to my knees and being like, why me? Why our family? Why, God, would you take Jacob at the prime of his life when he's like so young, wasn't married yet, didn't have kids? Like, why would you allow him to die? And it was really hard, and I wrestled a long time with that. There's honestly still moments I do. I'm like, why? But then God is so gracious and kind that he's like, and it's because of this. Like, you're supposed to do music, you're supposed to share your story, and you're supposed to lead others to me. And so that's really been helpful. But there are definitely those moments, and that was a big one for me, of just why us, like, why did we have to go through this? And so I know that a lot of people struggle with those moments, and I think those moments are like almost a daily occurrence of like either like a why me, God, did you choose me? Like, I'm not worthy of this. This is amazing. Or like, why is this happening to me?
Yeah. Do you ever feel guilty?
Oh, I think sometimes I feel like I'm just so undeserving, like I'm like, why, like, how could you be so good that you would choose me and my family to be on this journey and to do what we're doing? It's like, I don't deserve any of it. I don't deserve, the blessings and all of that. But I think in those moments, the Lord is just like, well, I called you, and when God calls you, you can't do anything about it. Like, you just have to go along for the ride. So that's what we're trying to do.
Amazing. And thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
This.
Yeah, thank you.